2nd, 2021, in the regularly scheduled Board of Education Policy Committee meeting. Governor Pritzker released a new executive order related to the COVID-19 pandemic for all Illinois counties, thereby moving Illinois into the bridge phase. The bridge phase guidelines will be followed. In accordance with Board Policy 2.230, members of the public can provide public comment at the meeting. The public will be allocated up to 3 minutes per speaker. The board president and the chair of the policy committee has set 30 minutes as the length of time for the public comment section of the meeting. Written public comments can also be provided where the board will acknowledge the written comment but then will not be read. See agenda item 1.B for the links. The board meetings continue to be live streamed for viewing on the district's website. Electronic public viewing can be found at Board Docs by clicking the video button. As with all public comments, please note it is the board's practice to listen to public comments with interest in what is being shared and not to provide a response or to engage in discussions. In order for the board to maintain decorum of the meeting, please be courteous and respectful to members of the board, our district team leadership, district staff, and the process for providing your public comment. Please state your name when you come to the podium. There will be 30 minutes allocated for in-person public comments. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes so we can hear as many speakers as possible. There will be a timekeeper and they will let you know when it's time to begin wrapping up. Written public comments received will be acknowledged but will not be read. Board members review the public comments and they will be posted on the district website and they're included along in the meeting minutes for this meeting. So I do not believe we have any nobody's here for public comments. There is one written submitted comment that will be acknowledged by the board and included. All right, so with that being said, I will call the meeting to order at 6:04 p.m. And I will just do a quick roll call of the board. Ms. Arvanites? Here. Mrs. Hostler? Here. And also present are Mrs. Schmidt. And go ahead. Here. And Mr. Pavone. Here. Let's please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is approve the policy committee meetings for December 3rd, 2020. Are there any changes noted? Okay, no, great. So those minutes will stand. Okay, moving on. So we have established a yearly policy committee schedule so that it won't be a sporadic, it will be consistent. It will be quarterly and it'll be the first Wednesday of the month every quarter. So those dates for the 2021-2022 school year are Wednesday, September 1st, 2021, Wednesday, December 1st, 2021, Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022, Wednesday, June 1st, 2022. All meetings will be held at 6 p.m. unless otherwise indicated on the agenda, and they will be held here at District Center. Any questions about that? Sounds good. All right, so let's get into it. So the first policy up for review is 2.240, Board Policy Development. So Luke, are you going to speak to each of these or just kind of the non-legal ones? Okay, that's what I figured. Okay, so policy 2.240, if everyone's had a chance to review it, it basically is our board policy. I mean, it is in my opinion, the strongest policy that dictates the authority of the board over all other policies. It's kind of an umbrella policy. And there's some suggested modifications to the policy by press that were reviewed by our attorneys. However, they weren't reviewed recently. They were reviewed last summer in July of 2020. And it is my opinion, and we can certainly discuss this, that I would like to have our attorneys take a fresh peek at this, because I think the suggestions being made were very indicative of where we were last summer, and maybe not where we want to move forward to. I think with Dr. Campbell coming on new and this policy not having been reviewed since July 2020, I'd like to table this one and just bring it back to September. Yeah, Kath.
Just to let you know that these suggestions that are in the policy are suggestions from legal.
Yep.
Legal, but legal reviewed it just recently.
Yep, I
Okay.
understand. Yep, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm just a little uncomfortable without having a fresh set of eyes on it, especially with Dr. Campbell not having seen it either. So if I could get Mrs. Hostler, yes or yea or nay?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like some of it is kind of specific to where we were at that time, and maybe we want to just make sure our phrasing is a little bit more general.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, when I read it, I was a little concerned about how restrictive it was.
Yeah.
So, you good with that? Stephanie?
all good.
All right. So Kathy, can you add this on to 240 to the September meeting? All right. Next one, I must have missed it, is 2260. It's the uniform grievance procedure. Luke, you get to talk to this one.
So this one, in this policy, these are just the new updates to the uniform and grievance procedure and Title IX changes. So this has been reviewed and accepted. It was reviewed by myself and Bev Redman, and we accept the changes on there.
So other than the cross-reference and the legal updates, is there anything substantive? Thank you. Wrong placement of the emphasis. In the policy that changes. I didn't see it, so I
No,
just feel.
nothing that was significant to be noted in
Okay.
there. This is a policy that usually has some slight changes to it annually.
Okay,
in Title IX.
great. Mrs. Hosser, anything?
Nope, that's good.
Sarvanius?
Sounds good.
Okay, so then we will recommend that this goes to first reading. June, what date is that? 15th, thank you, Kathy. That's why Kathy keeps me on track. June 15th board meeting. Okay, moving on to 2265. This is a new policy, Title IX Sexual Harassment Policy. It was released by press in August 2020. The attorneys reviewed it last month, May. They've made some legalese, is what I like to call them, changes to what the 205 policy would look like, but no substantial changes based from what press has recommended. But it is a new legal policy regarding Title IX sexual harassment. Anything, Mrs. Hostler?
Nope. Did Luke have anything?
No,
Yeah.
nothing new to add on there.
Yeah. Mrs. Arvanites?
All good.
All right, so then let's move 2265 to first reading. The next one, 4180, is also a new policy, Pandemic Preparedness, Management, and Recovery. Legal did review this as well last month. So I will just tell you where I'm falling on this one. We could certainly talk it through. I feel like this policy, new in June of last year, is sort of similar to where I fell on the 240. I feel like it's very reactive to where we were last summer, and I feel like it's very specific and will tie our hands and give authority without board oversight, even if it's for a short amount of time. And I really, I want to reflect on this one a little more, me personally. Again, to talk to Dr. Campbell, and so that we're all clear on what this really means. I think we need to be able to give our superintendent the authority to make an emergency decision, but we also need to have our board be able to reflect on that decision in a timely manner, right? Like we can't wait 2 weeks for a superintendent to make a decision and then wait 2 weeks for a board to be able to reflect on it. So I'm a little uncomfortable with this one as well, I think is the right way to say it. And I do think, again, with Dr. Campbell coming on next month, I think it would be a good opportunity for us to all be on the same page about what some of these items mean. So that's where I feel.
I agree. I think it would be nice for Dr. Campbell to look at this and give any recommendations as far as just the process by which some of these decisions are made and what we feel is best for, the entire organization. So I agree.
Yeah, there's
To be
just some
able to just-
specific language added in here that it would take away a lot of authority from the board, and I'm just not comfortable without having that open conversation with our new superintendent.
Or collaboration.
Exactly.
and
And maybe
before-
that's what's missing.
Yeah, like collaboration when a decision like that needs to
Yep.
be made, so that we have some, different touch points and
Yeah.
people involved in that.
Even a process for notification.
Yeah.
Yes.
There might be timely questions that need to be answered or decisions that need to be made in any crisis.
Yeah.
But that there's a process for communication, whether it's the board president or something.
Totally agree.
Exactly.
So, I think this was just legal. This wasn't you, right? Okay. So I think, Kathy, can we add this one to September as well, 4180? So we're going to table 4180. All right. Now we'll move into a little easier ones. 510, equal employment opportunity and minority information. This was you, Luke?
Yeah, so on this policy, the only substantive changes here were to update information regarding the non-discrimination coordinator, which is myself, and the complaint managers, which is Beverly Redmond, and also I on there. So our information was updated on this policy.
Great. I have nothing.
That's what it looked like to me, just to name those people. So sounds good for me.
All right, let's move 510 for first reading. Next one, 520, workplace harassment prohibited. Luke?
Yes, this one as well, nothing substantive on here.
That's okay. Did I skip? No, okay. Yeah, I had nothing here either.
Easy.
Yeah,
Okay.
this sounds good too.
All right, let's move 520 to first reading. 5100.
My computer's crashing.
Oh, 5100 staff development program. I noted Dr. Grenz noted policy looks okay.
Right.
So Dr. Rubenstein, okay with new Title IX changes. Luke, anything from you?
No,
Nope.
sorry.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
my bad. Okay, I have nothing.
That one's good.
Looks good to me.
Okay, move 5100 for first reading. 620, school year calendar and day. So Luke,
So on
Yeah.
on this policy, I'm okay with items that are stated in there, but it's also connected to the approval of new policy 4180.
Yep.
So it would be pending the
Right, so-
approval and acceptance.
so
of
is that what was added? Is that as a cross-reference for 180? Yeah, so I feel like because the substantive policy has not changed,
Correct.
right? So then I feel like we should just table this one as well because we can't add in 4180 because we're not passing that to the first reading. So this kind of is I don't know.
It'd be good to look at them together,
Yeah,
for
I
the
mean,
next-
again,
to
this,
look at this again
the
once.
way this policy reads right now is what press is recommending, right? Like the November 20 press changes do not substantively change the policy, and our policy reflects that. But the legal and the cross references do refer back to 4180. So if we're gonna hold on that one, I feel like we should hold on this one as well.
Yep.
All right, so we'll hold on 620. 660, curriculum content. Okay. Do you want to speak to this one, Luke, or do you want me to?
So on curriculum content, we had some of our directors weigh in on this, and it just went on to explain really the current PE, where middle school and high school are getting PE 5 days a week. Elementary is 2 days per week with the PE teacher and 1 day per week with their teacher, and we call it TDPE, teacher directed PE, to meet the 3-day requirement for the state of Illinois.
So does TDPE still meet the 3rd day requirement, or do we
Yes.
have to have the gym teacher do the 3rd day?
No, this still meets the.
So we're
requirement.
still within compliance. So, and I apologize in advance for my lack of knowledge about this, and I do have a middle schooler, so I should know this, but they currently do gym 5 days a week.
Correct, middle school and high school.
High school's mandated, right, by state law, middle school's not?
No, I believe middle school is.
Oh, they still are. Okay, so that was a change. I couldn't remember if it was a change at middle as well as high school. I remember the high school part, but I don't remember the middle. Okay, so then basically we've been doing what this policy has said. Perfect. That's all from me. Looks good. Good?
Yep.
All right, let's move 660 to first reading. All right, 6185. So this is a new policy regarding remote educational program. District 205 currently does not have this policy. So do you want to speak to it, Luke?
So this, we had our assistant superintendent, Dr. Scott Grenz, review, and to adopt this policy in preparation for any possible time in the future where individual remote education needs might be needed. And there was, I think, one item that he noted in here, number 6, some edits on there. And he added some supporting information and documentation from other school districts that have adopted this policy, from 3 other school districts for review.
All right, so again, so is our goal by adding this policy, I mean, is this snow days? Is this what we're talking about? Because I don't think, I'm pretty positive, the board is not interested in getting involved in a long-term remote education programming for our district. And so, and this could just be a semantics thing.
So for clarification, this has nothing to do with snow days. This is actually involving blended learning options. A couple years ago, we actually started a couple of blended learning courses at
Sure.
the high school, and that's what this policy is referring to, because as we are moving forward, and I think one of the items that we figured out during a pandemic is that we actually can offer some remote instructional opportunities. Blended learning opportunities, such as what they're doing at the high school, involve students getting in-person classroom instruction, but in addition, they're doing some of their instruction via remote. So this would be this is a policy that we do not have
Right.
now, but because we are looking towards the future, and not everything we believe, will always be in person 100% in front of a teacher, that we should be reviewing and looking at policies. Some districts, like noted in here, there's 3 districts, and I'm sure there's more, but he cited 3 districts in here that currently have these policies specifically for blended learning opportunities.
So I guess that's my confusion. So if this is about blended learning, that makes sense to me. But like some of the footnotes, when they talk about Illinois virtual school, I mean, this sounds very much like a full-time remote option for students in our district that qualify. And it has nothing to do with what the reasons we're qualifying kids for next year, right? Like medical reasons.
Right, this isn't right. This is, if a school district wants to start exploring other learning opportunities for students. Just noting that, you know, obviously not all students learn the same way. Not all students, you know, need to be live in front of a classroom teacher at all times. And I think this just opens the door for districts to explore and develop some other learning opportunities for students if they choose to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I think our blended learning opportunities are awesome, and I do see them increasing over the last couple of years. We've talked about it multiple times about giving more opportunities for that. I just don't want this policy to be interpreted as like
Correct.
remote learning.
Right.
Because I'm sure you don't want to hire more teachers specific
Yeah, no,
for
I mean,
remote learning.
we as a district are not proposing a complete remote learning option, you know,
Okay.
right now. We don't, that's not in our, like I said, our foreseeable future.
Okay.
But we definitely are looking at, you know, some more blended learning opportunities, especially for, mostly for upper grades, definitely high school,
Yep.
possibly middle school. Right now, we're not really looking at anything, you know, for K-5,
Okay.
you know, with that, but we're just kind of exploring that as we are getting new proposals from our staff for coursework opportunity for especially our high school age students.
Yeah,
And the blended learning opportunities were in place before
They were.
Yep.
Couple
the
years back,
pandemic,
yep.
and they've been
Pre-pandemic.
popular. And I know other districts that have put blended learning programs in place have, they've been very popular, and they've added more and more classes. So I think it's a good policy to have. I think I was just some clarification that this would be completely separate. If there was a situation like we had this past year, that would fall under a separate
Correct.
policy, which I think would be the pandemic preparedness policy that we are going to review more clearly. So maybe if there's a way
do you
to.
remember when, at the same time, the elementary schools did acceleration, right? Like, and that was to help kids that were doing well, right? And then the middle schools implemented acceleration, but that was to try like sign language. And I was just like, can't we pick different words? And so I guess that's where I fell on this one, like,
Right.
like, can't we call it blended educational program? Something to designate that we are not talking about remote learning.
Right.
Like
A
we-
remote education program for the purposes of blended learning courses or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Do
I don't
we
think
know, can
there's-
we change the title, Kathy? I mean, feel like you're the authority on that one. I would feel much more comfortable if there was some specific reference to blended learning as the goal. Sorry.
Yeah,
Athena, go
that's
ahead.
okay. Can I ask a little bit, Luke, about just a clarification of its purpose? So I hear you talking a lot about, you know, different kids having different learning styles. I guess I'm asking a little bit more about specifically, are we talking about an opportunity for a student to take an online class to supplement their in-person, you know, regular high school curriculum in order to do things like earn more credits? Or is this something that you would see 100% of the students' coursework? I'm envisioning that this is, you know, a given student has an opportunity to take an online course
Right.
in order to create either room in their schedule or to balance life, or maybe that instruction just is a good fit for them. That it's not a replacement of the traditional classroom environment, but that there's an option for.
Again, this is
Right.
not like to replace traditional classroom. Like we are not looking at putting a full 100% remote option for our students out there, like Illinois Virtual School, you know, or something like that.
So the purpose is to meet, I think that's what we probably want a little clarification on. What is the purpose of the online classroom or the online curriculum? And kind of be able to list out some of those advantages to having this as a part of the school curriculum, specifically in the 9 through 12, and if you're entertaining 6 through 8, obviously there too.
So I guess
The
it
courses
just
that
makes
we-
me a little nervous though, because like one of the criteria, well, one of the, whatever, remote educational program shall, you know, number 6, approval of students in the program will be on a space available basis. So that makes no sense if it's, you know, an online opportunity to free up schedule. I guess I just,
Well, you still limit class size, right? So,
well, blended I get, but not taking an IVS class online. So what?
right.
So I just,
What you're referring to, Luke, would be an online portion of a blended class.
Correct.
So they would be in class
Oh,
5 days a week.
Got it.
Yep.
Got it.
Days that they're not in class, they could be meeting with the teacher, doing online coursework, things like that to kind of balance out their coursework. That's what our one-day classes have looked like thus far.
Right.
So rather than being in a class that's entirely online, this is a piece of the blended courses that we're offering now. So you would still have caps on the class.
Sure,
days.
sure. Yep,
So
yep,
that's-
that makes sense to me. Okay.
And what subjects are you
How
guys
many-
looking at?
Well,
I'm
we
sorry, I
have-
don't have it in front of me
Yeah,
again.
well, this doesn't list it, but I think, do we have 8 blended? Oh, maybe I was going to say 8 to 10.
Just for all transparency, I was not a reviewer of this policy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
I'm
think
not
we
sure.
currently at the high school for juniors and seniors have 8 to 10 blended learning opportunities across the board in all kind of curriculum areas.
Okay.
And I,
Academic and elective
Yep,
coursework?
yep.
Okay.
and I do think, because like I know there's business, I know that one for
Mhm.
sure, and I know that. Are you looking for us? What they are? But anyway, there's definitely electives as well. But I know that that has been something that from the beginning, Dr. Grenz and Dr. Moria before Dr. Campbell, we've all been very supportive of blended learning. I think it's a great opportunity for our juniors and seniors. Because I think freshmen and sophomores still. So that's why when you said middle school, I was like, ooh, that should be interesting.
Yeah. And again,
Yeah.
that's not nothing that we're looking at now, but just in the future,
Yeah.
though, just depending on, the way education goes and what offerings are and what we're doing for our students. I just think it's forward thinking, we're just, preparing ourselves to think out of the box for any future needs that we might encounter.
Yeah, and so in that context, if we are offering these classes, then we do need a policy that, like dictates the content of those classes and kind of the requirements of it. Because we want to make sure that they're qualifying for graduation requirements and stuff like that.
Right.
So I guess I feel okay about this, but I would feel much better if we change the name. Because, so can we add that to our change, please, Kathy? Maybe remote educational program.
Just so you know,
Yes.
if we change the name, then any cross-reference to this policy we would have to make sure that that name would be changed. And that would just be specific to us.
All right, then how about
So-
we add into the policy a statement, even the
It
second.
sounds like you want clarifying. You
Yes,
want
a
just some
clarifying word, but we can
information.
even change the second sentence. The remote educational program shall provide an opportunity for qualifying students to participate in a blended educational program delivered by the district in a location in and outside of a school, right? Like something that reflects that this is about blended learning.
Which is different from remote learning
Exactly.
and hybrid learning.
And hybrid.
Yes.
And that's why I feel like I'm like, oh my gosh, there's
Yeah.
how many words in the English
Right.
language? Why do we have to use
No,
the
I
same
agree.
ones?
Yeah.
So
Some distinction.
I mean, are we comfortable with that sentence? Do you feel like that would cover it? The second sentence of what the policy would look like is up in red. Yep. What do you think? Luke, do you think that's, I mean,
As I stated, I wasn't a reviewer on this,
Right.
and I don't want to, overstep
Speak.
Dr. Gren, so I would really like to run it past him
Okay.
and speak with him.
so then how about we table it and we'll bring it back in September? And just so Dr. Grenz knows that's really, we all agree that this policy should be in place to make sure that the requirements for the blended learning opportunities are covered. But I think we just would feel comfortable with some clarifying words.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
It is really good for Dr. Campbell to also weigh in a little bit on this too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Definitely.
All right, Kathy, so we'll put that on September as well. See, it's that section 6.
It's always a tough one.
Gonna be section 6, I'm
it
telling you.
is.
All right, this next one will be 6300. So this was also reviewed by Dr. Grenz, and this has been a long time out of date. This policy, 6300, lists the graduation requirements for our students. This was incorrectly reflecting back from 2018, the number of credits and the classes that were part of the credit requirements. So this really is just cleaning up that policy for us. Kathy, the one thing I need to change is on the course listing for ours. So it's that first page of our policy. It currently reads business, food, and consumer science. It's family and consumer science. So if we could just change food to family. But I think all the others, everything taking out makes sense, right? Like we don't even have some of these courses that are listed in our current policy anymore. And I think Dr. Grenz agreed with everything. Okay. Beth, anything?
No, just that I'm glad that we're reviewing these policies because there are also changes in what, colleges are requiring and such, and we certainly want to make sure that our students are taking what they need and not more than what they need,
Yep.
so that they have the opportunity to take other electives and courses as well. So just good to review this one frequently.
Agreed. Dina?
Good, nope.
All right. So just with that change from food to family, and then we can move 6-300 to the first reading. All right. 710, equal educational opportunities. This one's back on you, Luke.
This one, again, no substantive changes on here.
Nothing for me.
All good? Good. I'm good with it.
All right, let's move 710 to first reading. 720, harassment of students prohibited.
Again, same as 710, no substantive changes.
Nothing from me.
Me either.
Nothing for me.
Awesome, let's move 720 to first reading. 7180, prevention of and response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment.
Yes, and this one, same, both reviewed by both myself and Beverly Redmond, and there were no substantive changes in this policy as well.
And I think, did you guys just add in your contact information into ours?
This one,
Yep. Oh,
yep,
yep.
yep, sorry. was
Yep,
getting to
nothing
that.
from me.
Nope, me either.
Nothing.
Awesome, thank you. Let's move 7180 to first reading. 7185, teen dating violence prohibited.
This one was reviewed by myself and both Dr. Rubenstein, and there were no substantive changes in here because this is in line with the new Title IX changes. So everything that's proposed looks good.
Awesome, nothing from me.
Nothing.
I'm good.
Let's move 7185 to first reading. Okay, 7190. We're gonna get muddy again. So this is student behavior. So, you did not look at this, this is not you, right, Luke?
No,
Yeah.
this was reviewed by,
Dr. Rubenstein?
I think, Dr. Rubenstein and Dr.
Grenz.
Grenz.
Okay. So I think basically the summary of this policy is that neither isolated timeout, or physical restraint shall be used to discipline or punish a student. All right, that's the standard. I guess when I'm reading this, I think, and I think it's important for families to understand the difference between isolation and timeout, like an isolated timeout or a timeout, because kids will come home and they'll say, I was put in a timeout. And I don't think families really understand what that means. Again, because those are the only words we can use. And I know that Kevin had indicated that there's questions about the training that people undergo, and that to understand the difference between an isolated timeout and a timeout, and obviously not physical restraint. But and I'm assuming, which is probably not a good thing, that teachers are updated in their training and understand the difference between isolated timeout and timeout.
Yes. This is something that is usually reviewed with the staff
Okay,
annually.
okay. And is that information, like, are the definitions in one of these footnotes? I should have looked. That would have probably, of isolated timeout and timeout. I should have looked for that. I apologize. I also, oh, yeah, no, see, it just keeps using all three of these terms.
Yeah, those specific definitions are not embedded into the policy.
And so we have this policy currently, correct?
Correct.
But then we're adding in this section about isolated timeout, and physical restraint.
Right.
Neither isolated timeout, nor physical restraint shall be used to discipline or punish. Okay, that's the only statement. All right, Beth, I mean,
I thought this was a portion that had to be added last year, right? So I'm just wondering if this wording is part of what is permitted, only authorized for use as permitted in, the State Board of Education rules, and maybe that's just their wording.
Yep.
I know we had asked about the training last time.
Yep.
It is required, and they had answered us about that, and I would assume that that is where our staff then fully understands what those terms mean. But maybe a little bit of clarification on that for a policy would be.
So I believe what Dr. Rubenstein is stating in here is that, press recommends the statement about isolated timeout, and physical restraint, and how it references the Illinois administrative codes on there. And that's the part that we don't have in our policy that we would like added to policy.
Yes.
Yep.
So that part feels like obviously we have to do
Yep.
what Luke just explained, and I think what we're talking about is how it's implemented. And so, we want to make sure that our community understands what the difference between those three items are, and how our staff are trained in that area, which might be separate from the policy in itself.
Yeah.
But that we are explicit about what that means in Elmhurst and in our schools, and how we go about creating that safe environment for kids.
And I also think the press recommends the cross-reference to, what is it, 6110? 6, which we don't have, so.
Which is the one that,
Which is the one that we're gonna talk about in September. So I do think, I know that Dr. Grant's, what's the district status regarding policy 6110? So we're gonna cover that in September. All right, so I think for this one, we need to add that based on state regulations. Okay. I'm confident that our teachers are trained in this every year and understand the difference. And I think maybe when we talk about 6110 in September, maybe we can have a better discussion about all that.
Yeah, and we can talk about this, that piece of it. Maybe we can get that information and talk about the piece of it that Athena was just referencing.
How it's implemented.
Yeah.
How it's implemented, how the training,
It's rolled
Yeah.
out, and how
Yeah.
frequently.
yes.
All
And
right,
just
so
the
are we-
different terms and what they mean.
So are we good moving this one to first reading?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome. All right, 7190 to first reading. All right, 7270.
Courtney, if I could just add, Kevin is texting me
Oh,
to
is he
say
watching us?
that,
Everybody wave
he
to
must be,
Kevin.
he's saying that it's required by law, and the questions are included in the procedure. So when you look at the last page, it references, the last page of our policy would reference the administrative procedure. And that's what incorporated in reference.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So that's what would be what we would follow.
Thank you, Kathy and Kevin. All right, so then 7270. So this is coming back to us from our last board review, board Policy Committee meeting, 7270, administrating medicines to students. I am still struggling with this one, simply because, I am worried that we are placing our nurses in a really hard spot when federal law does not give them the authority. They would be violating federal law by upholding state law, by administering these things to students, is my understanding. From Jen Conwell's emails from last summer when this first came up,
Can you give me a little more detail on
what
that?
part
Courtney?
of
So basically, this is the administration of medicines to students. So I think there's four categories. There's medications for asthma. There's medications for allergies, which is as simple as the EpiPen. There's medications for diabetics. There's, in this policy, there's also basically, and I'm not going to have the proper wordage for it, but basically an EpiPen for a student is overdosing on opiates. And then there is marijuana,
Medical cannabis.
medical cannabis. So, from Jen, and just talking about the marijuana piece, the ISBE guidelines do not allow for the administration of non-FDA approved medications, and only one medical marijuana product is FDA approved. ISBE has not provided updated medication guidelines which address this contradiction. Nurses are not legally allowed to administer medications without orders, and the orders must contain very specific information, including dosage. Registry cards are not physician's orders, and dosage, along with the other specifics, is not indicated on registry cards. So I don't want to put our nurses in a bad spot, and I continue to struggle with this, and I just don't know where to go with it, quite frankly. I know that the attorneys have looked it over, and Kevin has said, in reviewing policies from around the area, 25% of the elementary school districts have this in their policy, 67% of high school districts, and 57% of unit districts. He says the National Association of School Nurses has adopted a position statement endorsing the incorporation of these policies in school emergency plans. Yeah.
Dr. Rubenstein also stated that the Nurse Practice Act and Illinois law have been worked out with the passage of Ashley's Law, which policy 7270 is based on.
Right. So one other thought about this. Do we have policies and procedures in place for every student that this would be? I know that I have friends that have asthma, right? So they have to sign a very specific, this is what's going to happen if I have an asthma attack at school. My parents give authority. Do we have those procedures in place for
Student medical plans?
Yeah, for medical marijuana and the opioid part? Well, I guess not the opioid
Not
part,
the
because we
opioid,
wouldn't predict that, I would hope. But for allergies and for asthma and for diabetes, like the diabetic reaction, we have all that in place.
So this is the addition of the medical marijuana, right?
And the opioid, I think, is also being added in.
Yeah, this would be related to medical cannabis and the opioid antagonists.
And so would every parent have to authorize the opioid? I mean, medical marijuana would be specific to a student with a prescription for that, I would assume. But the opioid seems to be in a reaction to a student in a situation that I don't think is predictable. So would every parent have to authorize that to happen?
It seems like that,
Yeah.
just from what I'm reading, is in the same line as if, we're going to have extra EpiPens, that if somebody who doesn't carry an EpiPen is having an
Right.
allergic reaction, it seems like it would be a similar,
Authority.
right, like the
Decision
district, it's
making.
like if your child is in need of first aid and you're authorizing that the school district can, administer that first aid. So it seems like that would fall under the same
Do we,
opioid one,
do we
right?
even have the authority to buy the opioid, I don't know what they're called, I know there's a word for it.
Antagonist.
Antagonist, thank you.
That one almost seems
Yes, we do.
We do.
easier, for lack of a better describing term, because it's in an emergency situation
Right.
response
Right.
to potentially
Yes.
saving someone's life.
Right.
And that's all about timing
Right.
and how fast emergency responders, including nurses who play an integral role in emergency response in schools, right? The medical marijuana one, Courtney, I'm in the same place. I have to kind of read it a little bit more and then think about it a little bit more and better understand. Well, the one is the difference between the state and federal. Of course, we follow the state ISBE recommendation, but also what does that mean in our community? And so, if there, I guess that's what I would need to know more about. Is is there a level of, are we receiving requests right now for this type of medicine distribution at school? And what do we understand about those moments?
Well, and it says that there's 3 different ways it can be administered. A designated caregiver could come and administer the medication, or it could be a school nurse, or it could be the student in the presence of a school nurse. So as a district, are we able to pick, do we have to we offer all 3 of those? Or can we say, this is, we do it with a designated caregiver doing that rather than our nurses? Like, I guess that's just, do we have that information
No.
from Jen Conwell, Courtney, that?
I do not see
gives
it in here.
I don't know enough about the FDA-approved medical marijuana. Does this contradict a different piece of policy or just student discipline around having substances on you? So I just don't know enough
Yeah.
about it. Sorry, I'm the new guy or girl. But
Well, I know that we, it was something that we had asked about. I just, I guess, for me, I'd like to hear more from our nurse,
yes, that's where I was too.
Right. And again, I'm not a medical
Sure.
expert, but I think when it comes to
But
the
you play one on TV.
Exactly. But the
He has an
medical
actor name, doesn't
cannabis, though, that necessarily, to my knowledge, would not be something that the student would carry with them. We would be storing that. The nurse would be housing that. So it's not something that they would carry with them.
Right.
Good point, Luke.
And if it was a designated caregiver, they would bring it and then remove it from the premises. I did do that. Mm-hmm.
It is interesting, 67% yay. Then I just wonder about that other 33%, and I wonder what.
Well,
So I think
it's only oh yeah,
in the high school. I was
high school,
thinking
yeah, 57% of unit districts.
57%. So it's even closer. So
Yeah.
maybe some information around how our nurses office, like how they as professionals view this. I'll just call it a moment or
Yeah.
request, and where they kind of fall on it. Everything,
I think
Is
it's important
important.
for the discussion.
say it again.
I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. That's
So
helpful,
I-
and maybe a little, and not to make policy off of demand, but I don't know enough about whether or not we've been asked to incorporate this in our schools.
Well,
for the
so
health and safety
our
of
attorneys have also suggested the policy contain a directive for the superintendent to develop rules or guidance for implementation of the policy. And these examples of the items to be addressed in the procedures include authorizations form, training required for administration, storage. I mean, do we have all that? And we do, for all 4 of these categories?
Like storage of,
Yeah, it says, this
Yeah.
is from the attorney, storage of the medical record collection, retention, self-administration, expectations for parents and caregivers who administer, and the steps to be followed in the many places and circumstances specified in the law. So I guess I want to know that all of these policies are in place. rules or guidance for the implementation of the policy. And Todd also, the attorneys also say, recognize that policy 270 allows students to self-administer, but Ashley's law does not require that students be allowed to do so. So there's another point of just mud.
You do have administrative procedures on the last page that talk about dispensing medication, checklist for, and these are internal administrative procedures that we would follow in order to carry out the policy.
All right, I think I'm gonna request that this be tabled once again. And I think I would like to take a better look, if we could all take a better look at those administrative procedures. I would like the attorneys to take a fresh look at this because they haven't looked at it right since last summer. Oh, no, they did look, no, this is from Kevin. I think the three of us just need to have,
Yeah, it would be nice to have some input and, you know,
and I'd like to hear from Jen
from
Conwell.
Jen Conwell.
Yep, and where the
what
nurses
their
stand.
recommendations, or if there are choices as to if we have to offer all three ways of administering, or if we would rather say we're going to have it administered in these two ways. Is that something we can do? Or if we could do that, what would they recommend for their nurses in our buildings? You know, just that kind of, be able to have that conversation and hear a little bit more from them on this one.
I think.
I mean,
What you got over there?
Yeah.
What you got, Luke?
so Dr. Rubenstein is just, reiterating that this is like our longest outstanding policy in the district. I mean, Ashley's law is something that is required by law. And, it sounds like, according to Dr. Rubenstein, he's obviously had conversations, with our nurses that, they are long past being fine with it. And the position of this law actually dictates the route that we need to administer.
Okay, so we don't have a choice. We have to offer those three. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Wait, I thought we do have a choice. How did the 57% not, how are only 57% of unit districts have this as part of board policy if we don't have a choice?
I believe if you look at page 6 of press, the administration of medical cannabis, and Kevin, since you're watching, correct me if I'm wrong, but medical cannabis is referring to Ashley's law. The other two, as far as the undesignated glucagon, which is for diabetes, that's on page 5 of press, that is considered optional. And then page 4, undesignated opioid antagonists is also considered optional.
It's a precautionary measure, 57% for the opioid antagonist
Opioid? And Ashley's law
Is
is
referring-
mandated.
is a requirement as
Yeah.
law.
And that's the
Okay,
medical
so then
cannabis.
maybe we piecemeal this out.
Yeah.
Maybe we add in the part about the medical marijuana, the cannabis, because it is part of Ashley's law, and there's very specific state law requirements. However, we table the other items that have been included under this policy for further discussion with our nurses and with Dr. Rubenstein moving forward. Does that, Beth, what do you think?
I guess for me, that was the piece that I was more, the medical cannabis portion was the part that was a little more questionable as far as, like you were saying, the state and federal law, but
But
the
they
others-
did indicate, which was a subsequent to Jen's email, that there was what did Kevin say? The National Association of School Nurses has adopted a position statement endorsing the incorporation.
Yeah.
Well,
for the medical cannabis part or the
it
others?
says incorporation of these policies in school emergency plans.
I mean,
I feel like our hands are tied about the Ashley's Law part.
yeah,
Yeah, if that's accurate and it's.
Right.
Yeah.
We have to adopt a policy, then that's the
right,
policy.
exactly.
It becomes about the administrative oversight, like how those, what did you just call that? The procedures of how.
Administrating it.
Administrative procedures, that are in place, and then, you know, how explicit are you on what forms of medical cannabis are acceptable and what forms are not?
Yeah, so the Ashley's Law does not address the conflict which can be created between the law's requirement that nurses and administrators be allowed to administer it and the right which the law recognizes for nurse and administrators not to administer it. Clear as
It's a
mud.
little bit of a circle.
So the superintendent's procedures should address the scope of the right not to administer cannabis and what it happens if a nurse or administrator exercises that right. Recognize that policy 7270 allows students to self-administer, but Ashley's Law does not require that the students be allowed to do so.
Yeah, so that's,
The law only permits a district to allow students to self-administer, which it defines as a student's discretionary use of his or her medical cannabis-infused product. Consideration should be given to whether it is preferable not to allow self-administration, recognizing the vague definition of the definition of self-administration. And that self-administration should require supervision of a nurse or administrator. I hate this policy.
So have we seen any, again, I'm sorry, sample policies? No?
No.
So maybe that's a question, that's vague and gives a lot of authority to different people. And so how do we maybe look at some sample policies that have been adopted by other schools to see, you know, then we could go back and talk through which aspects work for Elmhurst and which may need a different look.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because embedded in Ashley's Law, it states, you know, that this law, it requires those 4 general groups to administer.
Yep.
I mean, it says requires. The
Required.
law
That's
also
that's the crux
requires
of it, yeah.
schools to allow parents registered, designated caregivers, school nurses, or school administrators.
Right, yeah. So that's the part that's non-negotiable. It's everything after that that I think is a little negotiable. So that's a bad term, or the wrong term, but,
Or maybe, is this another one where maybe on first reading, we have some of those other administrative pieces clarified? And we can discuss them at the meeting so that they're clear and,
yeah, I don't see holding
Understood.
it if we know it's a requirement. That's a good suggestion for,
I mean, and I believe legal's review is that we should include that
yeah.
in
Yeah.
the policy.
Yes.
Yep.
Right.
So now the question is, do we just proceed with the Ashley's part of it or go ahead with everything that has been added by press? I kind of feel like the other categories are reactive emergency
They're emergency.
situations.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're right, Beth, they're simpler
Yeah.
to me than.
yeah, I mean, if it, you know, I think if a child is in that situation, then
Yeah.
So I think, Kathy, is
Wanna
there
be
a
able to
way
administer.
for us to all see these administrative procedures? If we can, I know that you're working hard to get the policy manual uploaded and accessible online. But maybe that will make us feel comfortable that there are procedures in place for all of these different, you know, the glucogen, the opioid antagonist, the epinephrine, the asthma, like all of these administrative procedures. So I agree. I think we move forward with it and bring it to the first reading. And then just between now and the second reading, we'll just have some clarifying information from Dr. Rubenstein.
sure
or-
those systems are all in place,
Yep.
but just to clarify them
Yep.
and be able to, you know, communicate them
Yep.
at the board
agreed.
table so
Yeah.
everybody understands.
Yeah.
All right. So 7270 will go ahead
That's a long way of saying
as
first
is.
reading.
Yeah, that was a long first reading.
First reading.
Yes.
More info.
Well, there's a lot in that one, so.
All right, 7-325, student fundraising activities. I just think that Dr. Grins looked at it and he says it's good.
Yeah, I didn't have
Yeah,
any
this is
problems
kind of,
with
I have
this.
nothing on this
Yeah.
one either. And
Mhm.
and Mr. Wilton also looked at it.
Yep.
There was I think the consideration of adding number 8 under
Yep.
the student fundraising activities.
Yep. And I agree.
Yep.
Yep. Everything good on 8 on this one?
Yep, yeah.
All right, 7-325 goes for first reading, and then last but not least, 8-110. So this is parent and public suggestions and concerns. Can we, yeah, okay, no. So Ms. Redmond reviewed this policy. Her comments were that she would like 6235 reviewed, and we are going to add that to our September board policy meeting to review that. I think we're going to review everything in section
Yeah,
6.
6.
That'll be our goal. So let's see. I think the only addition, right, was the statement. Community members who email the district or a district employee or board member are expected to abide by the standards in 6235, access to electronic networks, and should, to the extent possible, limit their communications to relevant individuals. That was the only change to the policy, right? So,
And 6235 needs to be reviewed. So do we need to,
so we have a 6235.
Okay,
Ms.
so-
Redmond's just asking
Okay.
for us to review it. More about the standards for community and usage.
Yep.
And the standards that are reflected in that policy. So we'll bring that. So we don't need to do anything to 6235 to work through
in order
this.
to?
Right.
Okay. Have
So
it.
she's just asking for us to review it, which we will do in September.
And if I can just have you note on 6235, I did highlight, it says, if a user accesses the district's electronic networks with a personal technology device, that use is also subject to this policy.
So it
So then
basically
it
means
kind-
if somebody uses their personal to talk to anybody in the district with a elmhurst205.org email, they would then be subjected to 6235, right? And so that's what we'll just kind of discuss a little more in September. But as far as 8-110 goes, I think Ms. Redmond's comments were, it does not address recourse for verbal or written abuse and harassment. And it does not outline timelines of responses. So I'm inclined to not add that in to this policy. I think that this policy is about the ability for the public and community members to reach out to us, to encourage their communication with us. As always, we respond in a timely manner when it's relevant, and we expect the respect. Like just that, that same little thing we talk about at the beginning of a board meeting, be respectful. We expect that to be in place in communications to us, as our communications are that way to our public. So I don't know that we specifically have to add on or address it, but I'm open to discussion about it.
I mean, I do think that is, like you said, it's verbalized every time we talk about our public comment policy, and it's in that policy
It is.
as well. So it seems like it's covered there. If we want to get more information on why if we have a need for that, or if there's a reason why we might want to review that, but,
I can add a couple of
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
just specific to this year. There was at least 3 or 4 district administrators who were subject to written forms of abuse and harassment. So I believe that that's why the comment is in there.
okay.
And so I guess just, just for conversation, so if something like that isn't included, I guess individuals or the district could still pursue legal, ramifications towards individuals, who are abusive on there. I just don't have all the information to know if something like that could be embedded into a policy for protection. So this is coming from just, I believe, just to put it bluntly, just staff feeling protected. Because
Yeah.
staff, they were subjected to some, written abuse and harassment this year quite frequently in the earlier portion of the school year. So that's where this is stemming from.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen,
Right.
I
I know you were. I know
feel
where
their
you're going
pain.
with this.
We are
just
very
wondering-
familiar,
Sure.
right? And then empathize with
I
that, and it
understand.
is not acceptable, right? Obviously. I think that violations of what's expected by the standards, will be referred to the appropriate staff member. I just don't know that this is the right place to put it. Maybe that's where I'm struggling.
I think
Yeah.
it's just an effort to feel some sort of support
Sure.
from the district
Yeah.
in the event something like this happens.
Yep.
I think that's what this is stemming from.
I agree. I feel like I completely understand what you're saying, and I agree that it's not acceptable. I'm just not sure that this is where it belongs
Sure.
either, but I would like to, figure out
So I
where
think
it
that
does
little,
belong.
well, I think it is like in the public comments
Yeah.
portion,
Which one is
which
that? Do you
I
have
think
it?
it's somebody
Oh,
will
yeah,
find
you
it
just
before me.
Thank you.
There we go. Yep. And petitions to the board, right? So maybe that's just specific to the board and
That's
maybe,
too specific to the board.
Yep.
right? Mhm.
so maybe it should be in 6235 when we review that.
Do you think that since we're going to look at 6235, that we should look at these two together at that time? What do you think, Athena?
I just think that if we review 6235 and add in the port, that basically, courteous, respectful, blah, 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 like that we say at every board meeting, I think that would cover the concerns here, at least as part of that harassment one. Verbally or in writing. Because I feel like, verbally or in writing means it was an electronic communication. So I feel like 6235 is the more appropriate place to include it. I'm not opposed to including it there. I just feel like that's the more appropriate location as opposed to 8110. Okay. If you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, I'm a little torn on this one because on one hand, it feels a little bit, the timing of it, given coming off of the last 14 months, I think everyone in education, whether you're a board member or a staff member in a school, has faced a level of what we're talking about, right? Let's just name it. We're talking about disrespectful behavior that can be deemed unprofessional, and the level of tension and frustration from people on all sides was evident, right? So I understand that, and I absolutely support the staff and administration and parents and the community all in understanding that, we don't support that negative behavior, right? I'm not sure a policy is going to change that. That's one piece. The other is, I'm not sure, it might feel a little bit like a knee-jerk reaction to a really tough 14 months. And although I think that I like to believe that
We'll never be there again.
we'll never be there again, you know, as school officials, we know, and board members and elected bodies, we know that that comes with part of the territory too. Not to say that it's okay, but it does happen. And it leads me to, is even board policy the appropriate place for this? And
Or is the legal route, the right way to go in situations that,
yeah.
because outside of, even of a pandemic, it could be just a
Oh, it
general
happens.
unpopular
Oh, yeah.
decision,
Oh, yeah.
Right.
like made
Right.
by
Right.
an administrator.
Right. Reach appeal. It can be anything, right?
Yeah,
Like
it
it
could
just
be
doesn't have to be as
Right.
big as it has been.
So
Yeah,
that's
I
my,
just feel
sorry.
like- No, I just,
That's my, oh,
go ahead.
that was my concern is like, does it open a can of worms
Yeah.
almost when you start talking about, like a level of when this jumps up? And I think right now, very clearly in the harassment definitions and electronic email, we can very easily identify when it's actually harassment or defamation or some of these really strong
Right.
moments, right? But do you open a can when we start talking about the person who's upset by a decision that's made that maybe isn't of a certain level of, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I think that we will, and the other point that Ms. Redmond made was about the timeline for response. Having been the recipient of dozens of emails a day during the course.
Yeah.
Versus, I do not feel like that we should use this policy. I feel like it says in an appropriate, what does it say? In a timely manner. A timely manner means something different in the heart of a day when you get 50 emails versus the normal course of business when you get a couple a week, right? That's different. So I feel like timely manner is a respectful way to say that we read these emails, we take them very seriously. There's a lot of heart that goes and a lot of time put into getting the information out to the people that reach out to us. So I feel like timely manner is the appropriate wordage or something. Okay.
I see what you're saying. So can I offer, I'm not leaning either way, to be honest with you. I like timely manner. I think it's fine. And it leaves it, if you, in those moments of high frequency, was there a generalized amount of time that we were responding to those communications? And even if it's something like 10 days,
Yeah, I think just from personal experience, I don't think it ever went 10 days.
Yeah.
But I mean, it could have.
Yeah.
Over the holidays, it could have. Like I just.
And then what happens when I get to the 11th day?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I do not want to box us into it has to be 24 hours or 48 hours or something. It's just
Definitely
like
don't want that
not.
short,
I think timely manner represents the fact that we are going to acknowledge and be respectful of the community's
I agree.
requests of us, and we are going to respond in a timely. And sometimes when questions are asked, it takes us time to let me reach out to Luke and find the information. Let me reach out to Kevin or Chris, and so I feel like the community should understand that timely to us means we are trying to get all the information necessary to respond appropriately to the questions asked. And so I feel like timely manner is the right wordage for this policy.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
You're good? Good. All right. Let's move 81110 to first reading. And that is the last of the policy reviews. Anything else?
No.
Kathy? So as a reminder, our next upcoming meeting will be our June 15th, 2021 regular Board of Education meeting at 7 p.m. in District Center. I just wanted to piggyback off what Mrs. Cafario said at the last board meeting. Based on what we expect, the next phase of Illinois reopening. And as Mrs. Cafario detailed in the last board meeting, this will be, hopefully, because keep getting better. The last policy committee meeting, well, we will accept written comments. So the policy committee meeting is always open for public in-person comments. So moving forward, this is the last meeting that we will accept written electronic communications or comments. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.